In the beginning, so on and so forth, there was Adnalcium. Adnalcium used 4 ancient commands known as the Dawn Shards to create the universe in its entirety. Adnalcium specifically created a planet named Yolen, and he created the planet of Roshar in the Rosharan solar system, which houses the massive supercontinent of Roshar. Roshar is a pretty normal planet in the Cosmere, except for the fact that it has a gigantic hurricane that is infused with investiture that rounds it pretty much constantly. These are the high storms, and they have been around since the planet's creation as far as I'm aware. Both plants and animals are coated with a rock-like substance called creme that acts like a natural shell against the wind and the destruction of the high storms. Even the natives of Roshar, the singers, are coated in carapace that protects them. The only native species on Roshar that is not covered in creme are the spren. See, everything in the Cosmere has a doppelganger in the cognitive realm. Even the planet of Roshar has a cognitive double. Each planet's cognitive double is called a subastral. Roshar's subastral is essentially a gigantic ocean of beads. Each of these beads contains the cognitive perception of an item on Roshar. So a chair has a bead, a sword has a bead, emotions and feelings have a counterpart as well. They collect and form individual beings known as spren. These beings each have their own personality, will, and goals. For example, wind spren are whimsical, fly around a lot, and like causing trouble, while cultivation spren only really care about growing gardens and developing their land. Their personality is a result of how the people of Roshar view that attribute. Okay, now back to the rest of the story. After creating the spren and Roshar, Adnalcium went back to Yolen. There, he was met with 16 people who, for varying reasons, decided to kill him. These people used the Dawn Shards to kill Adnalcium, breaking his body and will into 16 pieces. This is called the Shattering. There are 3 shards we really need to focus on today: Honor, Cultivation, and Odium. Honor and Cultivation left Yolen together and went to Roshar. They discovered the singers and lived in peace for thousands of years. Sadly, these joyful days would not last long. After the Shattering, Odium went around and killed several shards, shattering them and making their power unusable for any other vessels. And he decided that he needed an army. Roshar is not the only planet in the Rosharan system. There are 2 others, Braze and Ashen. Braze is a barren wasteland that is constantly scraped by wind that would make a high storm look like a light breeze. Ashen, on the other hand, was the exact opposite. The planet had green grass and was very reminiscent of Yolen. Odium, again, either found or discovered the natural inhabitants of Ashen, humans. The people of Ashen used surge binding constantly. So much so that allegedly the humans overused their surges and created some form of a natural disaster on Ashen. A natural disaster that forced a majority of the population to flee into the cognitive realm to survive. While a minor portion stayed behind, only a fraction of them would survive the disaster and live on. The humans became refugees, wandering through the endless dark forest that is the space between planets in the cognitive realm. They were covered in ash and soot, many of their people and animals were injured and malnourished. It's unknown how long they wandered, but eventually they managed to find a perpendicularity on Roshar. A perpendicularity is essentially a bridge between all 3 of the realms that allows people to travel between them. It's how they probably got off Ashen in the first place. They were met with absolute hell. The cold was so bad they couldn't grow crops and their animals could hardly feed. The high storms were so deadly and unpredictable that countless people could have died. Instead of a horrible fate like that, the singers welcomed them with open arms as friends. The singers gave them a portion of land where their crops could actually grow. This land would be called Shinovar. Pretty soon, however, the mood would shift. We don't know the exact history, but it's said that the humans colonized outside of the mountains after they were explicitly told not to, and this ended up starting a war between the humans and the Singers. Odium followed them through Shadesmar until they reached Roshar. There, he found the Spren, and his mind exploded with possibilities. See, a Spren cannot be killed in a normal sense. The same way that energy cannot be destroyed, it simply changes shape. He twisted and broke 9 Spren that would go on to be known as his Shadows, or the 9 Unmade. Odium used his new toys to sow fear, pain, and destruction all across Roshar. The humans went to Honor and begged for help against Odium, and Honor agreed. At the same time as the humans come into the good graces of Honor, the Singers either left or were abandoned by the Spren and Honor himself. The Singers, feeling like they had nowhere else to go, went to Honor's enemy, Odium. Odium saw their potential as a military might and immediately took advantage of them. He gave them access to Voidlight and the 9 brands. Odium also gave the Singers the ability to become cognitive shadows after death, locked on Braze. It's so bad that the humans refer to it as damnation. Why would they do this? Because it gives them a form of immortality. After a certain series of conditions are met, those cognitive shadows are able to possess a living, consenting host on Roshar, and in giving up their body, they are, for all purposes, dead. The cognitive shadow is then known as a fused. Fused retain all of their skills, memory, and abilities. If they were able to wield one of the 9 brands before death, they are able to wield them now. The humans were outnumbered and outgunned. Then, someone, or something, came up with the idea of the Oathpact. The Oathpact is an agreement between 4 major parties: Odium, Honor, 10 humans that would be known as the Heralds, and then the Singers. Honor would give these 10 individuals access to a sliver of his power through a weapon known as an Honor Blade. The blades gave the Heralds access to 2 of the 10 surges of creation. The Heralds used the Honor Blades to become heroes all across Roshar. They did so well, in fact, that they managed to kill all of the fused that were on Roshar. If you've been paying attention, though, you know that the fused can always come back if certain conditions are met. This is where the second half of the Oathpact comes into play. Once all of the fused were defeated, the 10 Heralds would take their Honor Blades, probably fall on them literally, and they would become cognitive shadows. The Heralds were then transported to the planet of Braze, where they acted like prisoners alongside the other cognitive shadows, with the only difference being the Heralds were hunted the entire time they were there. The Heralds were able to fight them off for a time, but always ended up getting captured and held prisoner, where they would be tortured endlessly through God knows what means. This would go on until one of the 10 Heralds said uncle and gave up. All 10 of them would be transported back to Roshar in new bodies created by Honor's investiture. It was an instant way out, and everyone had it at every opportunity. But the Heralds knew that while they were being tortured, there was a giant lock on Braze that meant none of the cognitive shadows could escape. This meant that humanity got a much-needed respite from the constant warring. Their arrival means that war is imminent and the lock on Braze has broken. They are a herald of the desolations. That was the bet that Honor and Odium made. Honor bet that the 10 Heralds would stay mentally strong through all of this torture, while Odium bet that he could ground their will to dust. The Heralds would disappear for hundreds of years at a time, then they would suddenly reappear, ranting and raving about how a war was coming, and not exactly making the most sense in most situations. This became life on Roshar. The Heralds would return, unite humanity, slay all of the fused that came with them, and then go back to Braze to be tortured and then start the process all over again. 1 in 10 humans died during these conflicts. leaving them technologically back at the Stone Age after each and every one of these wars. They were so complete in their destruction of culture and society that they were named the Desolations. One of the few bright spots in this time was the fact that Spren had started to create bonds with humans. So Roshar found out that the Spren were starting to create bonds, and his response was to unite these people as an order of knights. Each order of the knights sort of followed one of the heralds that held the honor blade associated with their surges. The heralds saw the Knights Radiant as a tool to pass information on from one generation to the next through the Desolations without losing anything. This cycle of death, destruction, and war continued for thousands of years. Humanity was reduced to living in the shadows until there was only a mere 2 years between desolations. Both sides refused to give up or to lose, but neither could strike a finishing blow on the other. After 2,500 years of this cycle, the Heralds said enough. The Heralds all fought in one desperate battle to save all of Roshar once again. This battle would be known as Ad Heriedion, I think that's how you pronounce it, and the Heralds would succeed in their quest, slaying all of the fused and resetting the cycle. But in this battle, something strange happened that had never happened in the cycle before. All 9 of them survived, except for one, a member known as Talonel. The Heralds wondered if only one staying on Braze was enough for the rest of them to live freely. The Oathpact, which gave them their immortality, also bound them spiritually. This allowed them to transfer pain and feeling across each other so they could endure more of the torture. They could all feel Tal's pain and how he felt betrayed and alone and sad, but instead of falling on their swords, they stabbed them into a stone circle and walked away. The 9 honor blades were left in Shinovar to be protected until they were needed again by their original wielders. All 9 of the heralds knew the moment Talonel broke, the floodgates would open and the world would end. This was known as the Final Desolation, and it hung over all of Roshar's shoulders, even if they forgot about it. And with the Spren hating them and feeling betrayed by them, the singers were unable to do their natural thing and shift forms. This would change when one of the 9 unmade, named Ba-Edo Mishram, found the singers and realized that she could give them forms as well. The 9 heralds who knew the Final Desolation was coming all went on red alert panic mode. It caused another giant war, more people died, and eventually the humans ended up capturing Ba-Edo Mishram. This did something they were not expecting, however. It actually cut off all of the singers from all of their forms. It left them in something called dull form, or slave form. The humans then took these slave form singers as their slaves. 4,000 years passed by, and the Final Desolation never came. Despite all of the Herald's fears and knowing how in pain Tal was, he never broke. Humanity moved on, forgot about the Knights Radiant, and kind of started doing its own thing. Eventually, a man named Gavilar Kholin won his way to the throne. Okay, just to recap here. After the humans allegedly blew up Ashen with Surge Binding, they went to Roshar as refugees looking for help. The singers gave them the country of Shinovar, and pretty soon the two were at war. Both had groups of soldiers who were literally immortal. The Knights Radiant formed and broke apart. The Fused are all locked up on Braze with Talonel torturing him endlessly, while the 9 other heralds are busy wanking off in the corner somewhere. And this is pretty much all of the pre-history of Roshar that everyone should know. If you enjoyed the content and you think I earned it, please leave a like or maybe even subscribe. I'm going to be making lots more videos like this, and if you have any ideas, please leave them in the comments below. Alright, well, I'll see you guys next time. Later.